The funniest thing I think I seen, and the most exciting thing, was when he took the mic from Biggie, and Biggie was so amped up. Once Dirty started going in, Biggie forgot it was his show.
To me, it's like everybody's scared of the government. You know what I'm saying? Because they Tupac and they Biggie Smalls. I don't care what y'all say. That's my seeing. Who cares?
Biggie wasn't just any rapper. He was the heart of East Coast hip-hop and widely seen as the true king of New York, which meant not just anyone could get close to him. But then came the Wu-Tang Clan, and they weren't just anybody, especially Old Dirty Bastard.
When Biggie was doing a show somewhere at the Mark, could have been the Mark Ballroom or something, somewhere in Brooklyn or whatever, but Biggie was on the mic, and he took the mic from Biggie.
So when these two heavyweights crossed paths, it was a moment that left a lasting impression on everyone who saw it. Let's get into it. So, one of the biggest interactions between Biggie and the Wu-Tang Clan was the classic collaboration between Biggie and Method Man on the track The What off Biggie's Ready to Die album. That track was straight up legendary. It's one of those timeless joints that still hits just as hard today as it did when it first dropped. But what a lot of people don't know is that Biggie also had a special kind of bond with Old Dirty Bastard. One of the best stories that gives a peek into their connection came from none other than Wu-Tang's own Capadonna. In an interview with Via Lad TV, he shared what he called one of his most exciting stories about ODB. According to him, there was this one time during a Notorious B.I.G. set somewhere in Brooklyn, and out of nowhere, Dirty just stormed the stage. He grabbed the mic right out of Biggie's hands and started rapping like it was his own show.
The funniest thing I think I seen, and the most exciting thing, was when he took the mic from Biggie. Biggie started being his hype man.
Now, anyone else pulling something like that might have caused a scene, but not Dirty. Instead of flipping out or cutting the set, Biggie actually hyped him up. He stood off to the side, cheering ODB on, completely letting him rock the stage like it was planned. Capadonna would then add that if it had been anyone else, they would have been sandwiched, meaning there would have been some serious consequences.
And Biggie was so amped up. Once Dirty started going in, Biggie forgot it was his show. He was on the side just doing him like, you know, if that was anybody else, they would have got sandwiched, G.
And that energy carried into other moments too, like Biggie's birthday party in 1993. This wasn't just any party. It was packed with hip-hop heavyweights like Fat Man Scoop, Lil Kim, Diddy, Lord Finesse, and of course, ODB.
The first record that I heard from him, I knew it was something special. I knew that he was going to be all right, especially under Puffy's direction. I knew that he was going to eventually be the man.
At one point during the night, there was this cypher session where all the rappers were freestyling to a beat. And when it was Dirty's turn to spit, Biggie couldn't hold back his excitement. He was out there hyping ODB up just like before. Unfortunately, fans never got to see that chemistry blossom into more collaborations or deeper moments, because Biggie's life was tragically cut short. As we all know, he was killed in a drive-by shooting in 1997, an event that's widely believed to be the deadly culmination of the East Coast versus West Coast beef. Just 6 months earlier, Tupac had been gunned down under eerily similar circumstances, and Biggie's murder only deepened the pain and confusion in the hip-hop world. But here's where things get even more interesting. At the time, ODB had a different theory. While many were pointing fingers at rival camps and street beefs, Dirty believed something bigger was at play. According to him, the government might have had a hand in Biggie's death.
To me, it's like everybody's scared of the government. You know what I'm saying? Because they Tupac and they Biggie Smalls. I don't care what y'all say. That's my seeing. Who cares?
Now that might sound like a conspiracy theory to some, but there's a reason why people took it seriously. Years later, reports would emerge about crooked LAPD officers possibly being involved in Biggie's murder. Maybe they didn't pull the trigger directly, but evidence suggests they may have played a role behind the scenes. And if you followed ODB throughout his career, his suspicion of the government wasn't new. He'd been vocal about it for years. He was the type to openly say he felt like he was being watched, monitored, even targeted. Now, to a lot of folks at the time, it sounded like he was just spiraling or slipping into conspiracy mode. But according to the A&E documentary Old Dirty Bastard, A Tale of Two Dirties, that might not have been so far-fetched after all.
CIA. Special cut on the album. What's the special cut? They got two. Oh yeah, you got two special cuts on the album. You got 47 cuts.
The documentary dives into the madness and brilliance of his life, unpacking the chaos, the talent, and the trauma. And it starts to become clear that ODB wasn't just being dramatic. He really was being watched. One moment in the doc that really stands out comes from Steve Rifkind, the music executive who helped guide Wu-Tang's career. He remembered how ODB would randomly pop up at his office multiple times a week. He'd just be there, trying to stay off the radar. At first, Rifkind thought Dirty was just being paranoid, but then he made a few calls, and what he found out was chilling. Law enforcement really was keeping tabs on him. They weren't just watching, they were following him. And it wasn't just the NYPD either. According to the documentary, the so-called hip-hop police had been tailing Wu-Tang for a while. This special task force, officially called the Enterprise Operations Unit, had been formed specifically to monitor rappers. That's right, an entire unit created just to shadow hip-hop artists, like they were organized crime figures. Their job was to gather intel, build profiles, and basically treat rappers like they were running street cartels. ODB, being one of the most high-profile and unpredictable members of Wu-Tang, made for an easy target. From random traffic stops to showing up at venues and noticing undercover cars across the street, the pressure was always there. He was living under constant surveillance, and it wasn't just in his head. Years later, in 2012, things got even more real when ODB's FBI file was released through a Freedom of Information Act request. The file was 95 pages long, heavily redacted, and full of disturbing details. Turns out, the FBI had been tracking the entire Wu-Tang Clan from around 1999 to 2004, right up until the year Dirty died. While the file didn't pin any specific crimes on the group directly, it painted a picture of a world filled with suspicion, alleged violence, and serious criminal allegations. And then came the real bombshell, a letter that reportedly landed on the desk of the U.S. Attorney's Office. According to the New York Daily News, this letter was backed by FBI files and accused Wu-Tang Clan of being tied to a range of heavy street activity drug, trafficking, gun running, murder, carjackings, and so on. It also claimed that certain unnamed individuals connected to the clan were acting as enforcers. These weren't just crew members tagging along, they were allegedly the ones handling the dirty work behind the scenes. Intimidation, beatdowns, hits, basically acting like muscle for the empire.
In the early 90s, the FBI were trying to put a RICO on you guys.
They're always trying to put a RICO on us. We all got, a lot of us got drugs on our records. So they, some stupid director, FBI director thought he was cool for him to we could put a RICO.
Now, whether any of that is actually true is still a mystery. Wu-Tang, in true Wu-Tang fashion, didn't say much about it publicly. They didn't deny it, but they didn't confirm it either, and that silence only added more fuel to the fire. For some fans, it was just another case of the government trying to take down powerful black voices in hip-hop. But for others, it raised a lot of questions. After all, ODB had been saying for years that someone was after him. Maybe he wasn't just paranoid. Maybe he was living through something real, something that chipped away at him mentally and emotionally. But no matter how wild ODB got, no matter how off the rails his behavior seemed, one thing was always clear: the people loved him. Fans didn't care about his antics. In fact, they embraced them. That chaotic energy, that unpredictability, that strange mix of madness and magic. It was part of who he was. Like that one time he literally stopped his BMW in the middle of a highway just to light a cigarette and play video games. He had a PlayStation hooked up in the back seat, controllers and all. Then there was the day he crashed his car straight into a mailbox on the way to a scheduled interview. Most people would be stressed or embarrassed. Not Dirty. He just walked in laughing like nothing happened, hijacked the mic, and turned the whole moment into comedy gold. That was the beauty of him. He could turn wreckage into entertainment, chaos into charisma. He was a walking contradiction, and people didn't love him in spite of that. They loved him because of it, because it was real. There was no filter, no media training, no carefully curated image. What you saw was what you got.
People love to be around Dirty. Dirty loves to have a good time. Dirty loves to be under the spotlight.
So when you see what you see, you see what you get. What you get, what you see is what you get, what you see.
But that same lightning that made people gravitate toward him, it burned through everything it touched. He was a father to 13 children. Little dirties, as folks would say, spread across 6 different women. He missed court dates, missed child support payments. The man had money, sometimes millions at his peak, but he'd still walk into a store with a fat roll of cash and steal a pair of $50 kicks. Why? No one knows. Maybe it was rebellion. Maybe it was impulse. Maybe he just didn't care. He once said he was keeping it real by not paying taxes and staying close to the streets. And maybe, in his mind, that was the truth. Maybe he couldn't let the streets go even when he had every reason to. But while that was the darker side of Dirty, there were moments when the light broke through and it shined just as brightly. Take that night in Brooklyn, 1998. A car accident left a 4-year-old girl pinned under a flipped Mustang. Before the emergency crews even got there, ODB jumped into action. He rounded people up, got them to work together, and helped lift the car off the child.
You get incredible strength sometimes in a moment of panic.
Yes.
And you lifted the car off the girl.
By yourself?
No, he got some people there.
Some people there, you know, and it just happened, you know.
Then, just a few hours later, he was at the Grammys, marching on stage in the middle of Sean Colvin's acceptance speech to let the world know, Wu-Tang is for the children. And as wild as that moment was, it stuck, because he meant it.
I don't know how y'all see it, but when it comes to the children, Wu-Tang is for the children.
That was the duality of ODB. He'd ghost interviews or show up halfway sober, then randomly drop deep takes on music, talking about the Beatles, alternative rock, even Barry Manilow. He'd sit down for an MTV spot and somehow end up giving teenagers life advice about love and heartbreak. He wasn't putting on a persona. He was the persona. He didn't try to fit in. He made the world bend around him. And he always looked out for his people. If a venue told him no guests, he'd roll up with his whole block and say, "They're with me." No question. If someone spilled a drink on his shoes, he'd pour the rest of his own drink on himself just to say, "Now we're even." He lived by his own rules, messy, unfiltered, but always loyal. He wasn't just a wild performer, he was a protector, a mentor. He'd spend hours on the phone with up-and-coming rappers, talking them through life, trying to keep them from falling into the same traps he did. Maybe that's part of the reason why he and Biggie got along so well. Now, even though Biggie had a solid relationship with some members of the Wu-Tang Clan, not everything was smooth between him and the whole crew. In fact, there was real tension between Biggie and 2 of Wu-Tang's core members, Ghostface Killah and Raekwon. To really understand how things got so heated between Biggie and Wu-Tang, you gotta rewind the tape all the way back to 1995. This wasn't just any year, it was the heart of hip-hop's golden era. The energy was crazy. Legends were dropping classic albums back to back. The sound was evolving, and New York was the epicenter of it all. But along with all that creativity and greatness came a ton of tension. Because in that era, every move you made mattered. Every verse, every sample, every beat, and especially every album cover. Everything had weight. And one thing that was considered a serious offense back then was biting. Straight up copying someone's style or idea. That was like committing a cultural crime in hip-hop. It was the ultimate sign of disrespect. You didn't just get clowned for it. You could start a full-blown war over it. So when Raekwon dropped Only Built for Cuban Links, an album that would go on to become a certified classic, it wasn't just the music people were paying attention to. Tucked away in that album was a skit. In it, Ghostface Killah goes off, calling out rappers who steal other people's ideas. He doesn't name names, but the streets knew. Everyone in the industry knew. He was talking about one man, the notorious B.I.G. Now from Ray and Ghost's point of view, this wasn't just some petty jab. This was personal. These guys were close with Nas, and in their eyes, Nas's Illmatic cover was iconic. It was a young Nas with the Queensbridge backdrop behind him, symbolizing his roots, his story, his identity. So when they saw Biggie's Ready to Die cover, with that baby sitting front and center, it felt way too familiar. To them, it wasn't a coincidence. It looked like Biggie was borrowing from Nas's blueprint and running with it like it was his own. But here's what they didn't realize. There was no beef between Nas and Biggie. In fact, behind the scenes, they had a lot of mutual respect for each other. They were cool. It wasn't even like that. But in 1995, when everyone had a chip on their shoulder and rap was built on reputation and ego, none of that mattered. Perception was everything, and from the outside looking in, it seemed like Big had crossed a line.
We had a certain respect for Nas. When Ghost said what he said, it wasn't nothing premeditated. We all competitive, whether we like you or not. It's just competition. If it goes somewhere, then that's something else, but it was always about the sport.
Word got back to Biggie quick, and he wasn't happy about it. According to Nas himself, Biggie actually called him up, upset. Nas recalled that Big said, "Yo, you effing with them Wu niggas? You knew they said that ish?" Nas had to keep it real with him. He was like, "Yo, I mean that's Ghost. Ghostface is Ghostface. There's no love lost. I didn't know he was going to say this ish." Nas tried to explain it wasn't about him choosing sides and that Big was taking it harder than he needed to.
Big called me and he's like, "Yo, fucking with them Wu." You knew they said that. I was like, "Yo, I mean, that's Ghost. Right. Ghostface is Ghostface. There's no love lost. I didn't know he was gonna say this."
Biggie, though, felt misunderstood. He wasn't trying to copy anyone. If you actually listened to Ready to Die, it had its own voice, its own story, its own identity. But in that moment, it didn't matter what he meant. It was about how people perceived it.
He wasn't trying to bite off my, no, just in general, because he wasn't coming at it like that. Because if you listen to his album, he tell a whole story.
Now, Big could have easily gone full scorched earth. He could have put out a diss track and let it all fly. In fact, he did go into the studio and lay down a track going at Ghost and Ray. Word is, he poured all that frustration and anger into the mic. But this is where Biggie showed how smart he really was. He laid it all down, listened back, sat with it, and then made the call. He told his manager at the time, Jacob York, to scrap it, delete it, don't let it see the light of day. Jacob would later talk about it on the Boss at Presents, Don't Be Scared podcast. He said, Biggie never put out a diss record against him. He rapped it, got it off his chest, then told me to erase it. And honestly, that probably saved the entire New York rap scene from going up in flames. Because back then, a diss track from Biggie could have sparked something serious. But Big didn't just stay silent either. He was too clever for that. Instead of coming at them directly, he laced his rebuttal in slick subliminals. On Kickin' the Door, he raps, "This goes out for those that choose to use disrespectful views on the King of NY." He didn't need to drop names. The message was loud and clear. He heard the shade, and he wasn't going to let anyone try to knock his crown off without responding. Then came that night, the one where everything could have gone completely left. A night that, if things had popped off, might have gone down as one of the darkest chapters in hip-hop history. The energy was tense, the kind of setup where all it takes is one sideways glance or one wrong word to flip the whole place upside down. It all went down at a packed nightclub in Manhattan's West Side, and if you were writing a movie script for disaster, this would have been your climax scene. High-profile rappers, crews full of real street dudes, liquor flowing, egos in overdrive. Everything was in place for something wild to go down. Enter Peter Pistol. Pete wasn't just another guy in the crowd. This was someone with serious respect in the streets, a name that carried weight, and right beside him that night was D-Rock, Biggie's right-hand man, and one of the realest people in Big's circle. Their bond wasn't some flashy industry friendship. It was built off loyalty, years of real-life trenches, and surviving some serious trials together. So when D-Rock came up to Pete that night, moving with purpose, face tight with concern, Pete didn't need a whole explanation. He didn't need the details. The look in D-Rock's eyes said it all. Yo, Wu-Tang's trying to press big. We might have a situation.
So he's my man. So D-Rock came to me, he was like, yo, what's up, Pistol? What up? Yo, what up, D? He said, yo, so he was, like, yo, these guys trying to front on Biggie like that, man, like I might need you to, help us out, hold me down.
And Pete didn't panic. He didn't start waving his hands like some hype dude trying to get attention. Instead, he moved the way real street vets move, quiet, focused, ready. He signaled to his people, and just like that, the atmosphere changed. His crew knew what time it was. They weren't there to start anything, but they damn sure weren't about to let anything happen to Biggie either. See, the thing about Wu-Tang is, they weren't just rolling with rappers. Their squad was deep with dudes who had serious street ties, people who didn't play games. If it went down that night, it wasn't gonna be some quick scuffle. It would have turned into a full-on brawl, maybe worse. That club would have gone from party to battleground in seconds. So there they were. On one side of the room, Biggie and his team standing firm. On the other, Wu-Tang and their squad watching just as closely, holding position. And for what felt like forever, the whole place froze, like everyone was holding their breath, waiting to see who would make the first move. But here's where the story takes that left turn that saved the night. Pete looked across the room and locked eyes with Raekwon, and instead of letting pride or heat take over, he did what a real OG does. He made the first move. He stepped up to talk, and Raekwon heard him. Because Ray wasn't trying to bring heat down on the whole spot either. They both knew what could happen if they let their crews loose, and neither wanted that blood on their hands. And that was it. Cooler heads prevailed. The situation that could have turned into one of hip-hop's ugliest moments got diffused because two real ones chose peace over pointless beef. Years later, Pete's spoken about that night, and he's always kept it 100. He never brags, never spins it like Biggie and his people punked Wu-Tang. In fact, Pete has always given props to Raekwon, Ghostface, Method Man, all of them. Because at the end of the day, they were all coming from the same world. Street guys who made it into music, trying to navigate fame while still carrying the codes of the block.
Wu-Tang was deep as I don't know if, a lot of people, but Wu-Tang Clan was to be deep as I'm talking about, deep as 100 people. That's a lot of people to be in.
They understood the weight of their presence. They knew how fast things could turn fatal. And on that night, they chose to step back from the edge instead of falling off it.